like to welcome everyone to our panel, How to Strengthen My Faith and Trust in God the Parent. To begin, I'm going to give a short introduction of the topic, followed by the introduction of the panelists, who will then speak for about 5 minutes each. Then I am going to field 5 questions to the panelists based on the topic that we have, and they will give us their answers. That's the first part. The second part, we're going to break up into groups. We're going to have everyone share their own thoughts on the questions that we'll be raising in the panel discussion. Okay, and also a short disclaimer, I would just like to remind you that our panelists are not here to represent the Tenrikyo Church headquarters. It's not that. It's more like, I think, rather each and every one of us here are very committed members of our faith who spend their lifetimes using this faith to enrich themselves and to enrich the lives spiritually of those around them. And they're here to share some of their experiences of that. So I want you all to take it in that with that understanding. And they are here to share their personal journey with you today. I use the word journey because I think that faith is a journey in so many ways. Everyone has their own journey. Sometimes it's not the same for everyone. We all have our individual journeys, but at the same time, our journeys crisscross and we share so many experiences together at times. Sometimes it's a direct line to where we want to go, but other times it's kind of a meandering one that we go in all sorts of different directions. And we share this journey with others, with our family, our friends, our colleagues at work, ministers, and many others. Excuse me. And our journey by sharing our journey, we can help others along the way, or also, and I think this is also very important, being helped by others too, being willing to accept others' help along the way. And that's kind of the journey that I think we all undergo. And so today, and there's another important journey that we all do, which is the physical journey of actually going to Jiba. And that's also the Jiba having a very special place for us. And so that's part of our journey in our faith as well. And another important facet of our journey is our relationship with Oyasama and with God the Parent. We always hope to feel that Oyasama is walking with us. And that's another element of our journey that we all undertake. And so we're here to talk about our journey and how to make that journey meaningful for others as well. Now, having said that, when you go on a journey, what do you do when you go on a trip?
You look around.
I'm sorry?
You look around.
You look around. Yes, look around. One of the first things I do is I look on Yelp. And then I look on Google Map and TripAdvisor. That's kind of the first thing I do. It's like, okay, what's to do and what others have to say about that. And I always found these useful because they're stories shared by fellow travelers, people who have gone through that trip. Not so much experts. And I think that's what we have here today. I mean, I don't think any of us will call ourselves experts in the faith. But I think we're all fellow travelers, and we just want to share in that line. And so that's kind of the idea that we have today. Okay, Moneke will go first. Moneke Williams, let me introduce her. I feel strange introducing the three of them to you because I know some of you know them so much more than I do. So, but let me just go ahead and kind of give a brief summary of what's in the program. Moneke Williams began following the faith in 2011 and is a member of the Tenrikyo Mission New York Center. And she attended Shioka and became a Yoboku in 2012. And she also served as president of the Tenrikyo Young Women's Group in New York for 3 years. And she is currently studying as a student at North Central University, studying marriage and family therapy and specializes in systemic sex therapy. She is also a certified personal empowerment and emotional intelligence coach. Also, just add a little bit about Monique, my limited interaction, is that I find her to be a very creative person and a real people person as well. Something that I appreciate. I don't know if all of you remember at Dendocho's 80th anniversary, the people from New York gave a really wonderful performance on the stage. She was one of the choreographers of that performance. So she has a real creative touch mindset and also a wonderful people person. So Monique, please.
My name is Moneke Williams. I'm from New York and currently studying to become a marriage and family therapist at North Central University. I was first introduced to Tenrikyo in 2011 after studying Japanese at Tenrikyo Cultural Institute for 3 years. I found myself totally enamored by the monthly service, and before I knew it, I was on my way to Shioka a mere 4 months later. It has been 11 years since I completed Shioka and became a Yoboku. In the time since, I've served as president of the New York District Young Women's Group for 3 years, served as a committee member for the 40th anniversary of New York Center, and with the arrival of this weekend, I have completed serving as a member of the programming committee for this very conference. A year and a half ago, I made the decision to go back to school to earn my master's and become a marriage and family therapist. Going back to school was something I had been thinking about for some time, but I wasn't quite sure what direction I wanted to go in. That was until someone I know wanted to attend couples therapy before getting married, and they were having difficulty finding therapists trained specifically to work with couples and families. I began to help with their search, and before I knew it, I found myself so deeply drawn to this field, thus beginning my journey towards becoming an MFT. Growing up, I was taught to be mistrusting of people. I learned to assume the worst. I learned to consider everything and everyone a threat to my well-being. Epigenetic transmission is described as an event in which a parent's experiences can be passed down generationally. In other words, the effects of trauma can be passed down between generations. The things that I was taught growing up were a result of the experiences of generations that came before me. I often think about my introduction to Tenrikyo as I often reflect on my life thus far, about how a shy 18-year-old sent an email to Tenrikyo Cultural Institute asking if I could volunteer in exchange for discounted classes, and how the extreme generosity of people that I now consider family put me on a path that showed me the value of community, and how having a practice of communal care can heal people as well as entire lineages. That is the importance of treating all people with the care and respect they deserve. All of you throughout the world are brothers and sisters. There should be no one called an outsider. From the Ofudasaki, chapter 13, verse 43. I think about that verse often, and it has become a virtue ethic by which I live. We continue to live through times where people are being stripped of the most basic of rights, of their humanity, where the right to bear arms is somehow more important than a child's right to be educated in environments that are safe and promotes access to knowledge, not ban it. Every day, I think about what my place on this planet is. What role do I play in the creation of a joyous life world? I've spent the last 18 months training in my chosen field, becoming in service through my work as a coach, being in service through my work as a coach, and being amongst people and in spaces where we work towards a standard of collective care that is restorative, liberatory, and healing. I get to help write and rewrite generations of trauma, including my own. Watching the change process occur in real time not only strengthens my faith in God, but also strengthens my resolve to engage in this work. I believe that the purpose of every person on this planet is to access and uphold an ethic of care that allows us to be in service to one another. No one lives in isolation. It is possible for resilience to be forged, strengthened, and fortified on an individual level, but together we are unstoppable. With that, I will leave you with a quote by one of my favorite writers, Maya Angelou. I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. Thank you for your kind attention.
He is the head of the Tenrikyo New England fraternity and a staff member of Tenrikyo New York Center. He's also a information technology business analysis. And he graduated from Tenri University's Religious Studies Department. And when he is not busy chairing the East Coast Boys and Girls Association, he relaxes as a certified advanced open water diver. I'm also fascinated by what Alejandro has to say because on one hand, as working as an information technology business analysis, I get a real sense that he's of this world. But in a conversation with him, I get a real sense that what he has to say and what he's thinking is very much grounded in Tenrikyo teachings. And for that reason, I'm really interested in what Alejandro has to say and share with us today. Okay, Alejandro, please.
Thank you very much. I'm kind of have a little bit of a jet lag now. So I'm going to skip any introduction, as just being said already. My name, it's a bit of a confusion for everyone. Some people, and the document is written Alejandro, right? Some people call me Alejo, some people call me Alex. Just feel free to call me whatever you like better. I like all of them the same. So my approach to this is a little bit more school-like, I guess, as Rev.Tak would say, and I'm a theologian from Tenri University. So from that perspective, I'd like to kind of express my opinion on the topic today. So religion is defined as the experience of and the careful attention to the numinous. In other words, the spiritual or the sacred or the divine. So it is the careful attention to that divine and the expression of a universal model of human reaction to the realm of the sacred. For Carl Jung, a psychologist, religion is the symbolic expression of life's meaning. So he stated two categories of religious believers: those who live their faith and those who merely believe in a creed. There's a similar idea in the path. Oyasama was asked, is there a form of Tenryo no Mikoto? To what Oyasama responded, if to say that there is one, then there is. If to say that there's none, then there isn't. The result that appears to the heart that prays with sincerity is the form of God. I have two children, a 13-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy. And as often as possible, I explain my kids the reason why I follow Tenrikyo, the reason of my faith. I talk to them about the form that God the Parent appeared before me as the result of my prayers, particularly when they were born. It was a very hard moment. I explain them how I see the world that's around us as the body of God the Parent. And when I help them with homework, we discuss how the study of science is the study of the physical form of God the Parent, and the practice of service and the study of the sacred scriptures is the study of the essence of God the Parent. It is not easy to be Tenrikyo for my kids in an environment where we are a minority within the minority. We foreigners, you're non-Japanese, follow a Japanese religion. We don't want to call it Japanese, but it still was in Japan. So that is to be a minority within the minority. So therefore, performing your monthly service in morning and evening service at our fraternity is the connection to the realm of the sacred. We always attend monthly service at New York Center, and I've seen the great impact that it has had on my kids' faith. Attending monthly service in the activities at New York Center provides identity and a feeling of belonging to my kids, a feeling of community. That is how we experience the numinous. That is how we strengthen our faith and trust in God the Parent. Thank you.
Finally, our last speaker is Etsuko Okui-Isada. She was born in New York City and grew up in the Tenrikyo Mission New York Center during her father's first term as head minister. She attended Oyasama seminar in Jiba and the spiritual development course at Mission Headquarters in America. She is married with 2 children, an active member of the Tenrikyo New York Center, and served for 10 years as a board member of the Tenrikyo New York District Women's Association. I also want to add that when I see Etsuko, I often see her like a bridge between the Japanese traditional Tenrikyo and the American culture here. The Japanese Tenrikyo, because of who her parents were, and I think she was raised in that, and they taught her why it works and why it's so important. And I think it is something that is important. But at the same time, you were born here? Yes, she was born here and growing up in New York. She also was very familiar. She is an American, a New Yorker. So, and so I think in so many ways, I see her as a bridge. And I realize, having a little bit of that myself, it probably wasn't always easy, but through that struggle, I think she probably has learned a lot. And I'm very happy that you're able to share with some of your experiences with us today. Okay.
Hello, everyone. It gives me great honor to be speaking before you. As Reverend Tak has introduced me, my name is Etsuko Okui-Isada, and I live in New York. I hesitated initially when I was asked to be a panelist because I felt as though I was not worthy or felt that I wasn't spiritually mature enough. Then I took some time to reflect and realize that this was something that God had planned. And due to incidences that have been occurring, I humbly accepted. In anticipation of the 140th anniversary of Oyasama to be observed in 2026, I asked myself, what is the purpose of the 3 years, 1,000 days period that my parents have always spoken about leading up to anniversaries? The Shinbashira stated in Instruction 4, the period of 3 years, 1,000 days that leads up to an anniversary of Oyasama is a time for us to actively move forward on the path of single-hearted salvation by implementing the teachings with our sights set on the divine model. Oyasama taught us to always feel a sense of gratitude for the boundless blessings of God the Parent in any situation as we walk the path. She encouraged those around her by saying that whatever happens is God's arrangement for guiding people to spiritual maturity. Further, we are taught, through saving others, you will be saved. Allow me to share how I have been trying to implement the teachings into my day-to-day life. I have a good friend who was my first non-Tenrikyo person that I had administered the sasuke for. When she was pregnant in 2016, she was taken to the hospital because she was at risk for preterm labor. I immediately started to administer the sasuke and also started performing the special prayer service using the red Otefuri guidebook. Thankfully, she went to full term and delivered a healthy 9-pound baby. However, in September of 2022, the same friend and her now 6-year-old son were walking to school when they were hit by a car. I got a call. I rushed to the hospital to see how she was doing and was able to administer the sasuke. Then after visiting her, I went to the children's hospital where her son was taken and administered the sasuke to him as well. Thankfully, her son has had a full recovery, but my friend is still struggling with pain and needs physical therapy and acupuncture 4 times a week, and I have been driving her to her appointments. I realized that the timing of when I was asked to be a panelist and when I started driving my friend coincided, and knew that it wasn't just by chance. This was all a part of God's plan for me. On our daily drives, we chat about our children, life, and most importantly, gives me an opportunity to speak about the teachings. In February of this year, I got the devastating news of 2 friends who had passed away for rebirth, one of whom I was looking forward to finally seeing here again in California. A few weeks prior to this news, a family friend's son in 8th grade was diagnosed with leukemia, and I was involved in a car accident on my way home from driving my son to the pediatrician. All of these incidences occurred within a 3-week period. On the day of the car accident, my body was shaking in shock, waiting for the police to arrive, but I was overcome with a sense of immense gratitude. Rather than being annoyed about my son who was sick at home from school for 4 days, and the fact that the accident occurred after a visit to the doctor, I thought about what our friends were going through with their son. Thankfully, no one was hurt in the accident, and it could have been much worse had I taken the wrong move. It was at this moment that I was able to experience an awakening. In the past, if something like this were to have happened, I would have ended up wondering why, when I had been trying so hard to help others. But this time, I was filled with gratitude for God's protection. Tanno, joyous acceptance, is something I have been speaking to my friend about on our daily drives. Although it is still a work in progress, the past few months has allowed me to see things differently. I have been trying to strengthen my bond with God through performing the daily service in the mornings alone and the evenings with my family. My husband, Edwin, comes from a family of devout Catholics. But after getting engaged, his father sat us down and told Edwin to learn my religion so it would be easier for us to raise our future children in one faith. He has since embraced the Tenrikyo teachings so that we can raise our children in this faith. He has already attended 7 Besseki lectures and wants to receive his Osazuke next month when we return to Jiba. When I can get my husband and children to join, it gives me the opportunity to speak to them about praying for people or simply to show God the Parent our gratitude for allowing us to spend each day without any misfortune. Although I still have a long way to go, I want to strive to grow spiritually by deepening my understanding of the teachings and walk on this incredible path with each and every one of you. Thank you for your kind attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Etsuko. Thank you, all 3 of you. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to field 5 questions to our panelists and asking them for further explanations of on this theme. So my first question: what are the areas of faith that you struggle with? What are the areas of faith that you struggle with in your personal life, and how have you sought to overcome it?
So for me, it's I have a lot going on, and it's been difficult for me to make it to monthly service, and I'm in such a state where, like, usually on Sundays I'm writing a paper, and then earlier in the week I'm just like, okay, maybe this is the week, maybe I can go this week, and then like I'll be in the middle of writing a paper, like, oh, I was supposed to go today, like, like that's how caught up I am. But I think for me, one of the things that I've started doing is whenever I'm asked to do something, for example, this conference, I was asked to be on the programming subcommittee, be a panelist, what have you, I accept it. And for me, that's the way that I'm able to stay connected, even when I'm not able to physically be at monthly service. It's my little way of doing what I can where I can, to just stay connected and let other people know that, like, they're not forgotten also, and that they're still present in my mind and in my spirit. And so, yeah, those are the things that I've been doing over the last few years.
Okay, thank you.
I think at home with my wife. So some of you know, some of you don't know. So my wife she's from Ukraine, right? She is from a former Soviet Union country, right? So it cannot be really called to be an Orthodox strong believer either, right? But it's more of a complex idea approach to God, right? And so her idea of, her understanding of God and everything, my understanding of God and everything, me being a Latino from a Catholic background, right? So we have totally different approaches to that, to what God should or should not be, or what the approach that should or should not be. And I think that what I do struggle, or at least used to struggle, maybe I don't know, it was trying to find that middle ground between the two of us. So what I thought should be and what she thinks should be or should not be, right? So that was a little bit of a struggle for us to kind of find that common ground. But I think what helped us go through that, besides the of course the support of so many people in birth of the children, that's like a huge impact in our life as a family. I think service is what helped us go through that part. Trying to understand each other. So just a little bit of a personal note right there. When we were just dating, we actually broke up because of that, because we had two different backgrounds and that wouldn't work for different reasons. So we just thought that wouldn't work. And it was her, the one who started, at the time we used to live in Tendi. She started going for service at the headquarters, like evening service, even morning services on her own. And that kind of took her on that way of finding her own way into what the faith was and what was not. And I think service was what helped us at that moment of struggling. So yeah, that one.
Thank you. The second question. This is about Oyasama and about our personal relationship with Oyasama. What are the moments in your life when you felt that Oyasama was real for you?
I'm going to be honest. I figured out this answer yesterday before I flew out. I actually stopped by my parents' house. I was like, Mom, how do I answer this question? And she said, did you forget about your Senenkai speech that you did regarding... So a little background. April of 2020, in New York, when the world shut down and people were just dying of COVID, our family contracted COVID. And so my mom said, do you remember when you were praying for Edwin, when you thought that he might not make it through the night and you debated whether you should call the ambulance or not? But at that moment, I administered the sasuke, and after he settled down, I went downstairs, I was debating, I was messaging people, what should I do? I was speaking to Satoko, and, I decided that although I could not do the 12 chapters, I needed to pray. And I grabbed my favorite red otefuri book, and I just started praying with everything I had. And so, thanks to my mom, who always guides me the right way, she said, that was Oyasama who guided you to do that. There's no other explanation. So I think it's the times when I wholeheartedly just pray. And that was probably one of the biggest I think, experiences in my life where I was so scared, but I wholeheartedly just leaned on God. And everyone is healthy now, and we were able to make it through. And so, yeah, I think for me, that was when I definitely felt Oyasama was real and helped guide me in the direction that I needed to.
Thank you.
You know, I think family is the most important thing for anybody, right? And that it's just my opinion, but I think that is where that idea, that form of God, if really there's a form, that is where it appears. So I have two children. When my daughter, right, when my wife went into labor, right, so that's 13 years ago, it's going to be 14 years ago, it was August 26th. So we were living in Jiva at the time, in Tendi at the time. So we went down for monthly service. And so she's having the contractions, and we just walking around while attending monthly service. And then it's already 5 p.m. and she's still in contractions, but nothing to the point to deliver yet. And finally, like about 7 p.m., she was taken into the hospital, but it still's like not enough contractions, and it continues, and then starts getting like late, and it starts getting hard, and then she's in labor, but it's not coming out, and it's already like midnight, and we're still there, and there comes like about 3 in the morning, we're still there, and the doctor called me aside, and he said, the baby is tired and the mother is tired, so we might have to come to a decision. So just understand that, and so documents were brought to me because of that situation. So I just don't want to get too emotional with that, but so thankfully, we were on at Ikoi no Ie, right? It's a Tenrikyo hospital, right? So that makes life a lot easier for you. And so I started doing service. That's what I did. And thankfully, the nurses, they were Tenrikyo. So everyone, it's really easy to be Tenrikyo in Tendi. So, so I started doing service. That's all I started doing. And I prayed at that moment. And my prayer was that when the sun rises, let me see my daughter's face. That was my prayer. And then my daughter was born, right? And so the next morning, and I checked the documents, like everything. 6:30. The next day I went to check it, 6:30. Sun was rising. So I was like, oh, okay, that's wonderful. But then 2 years later, my wife was pregnant with my son, and this on the contrary was super fast. We went to bed. It was already late night. In the middle of the night, she's like, "Oh, we gotta go now." So stood up. Friend of mine came, slept over, to watch after my daughter, and then we went to the hospital. We entered. They took her in, and they said, "Oh, just wait. We're gonna prepare her." Like 2 minutes later, the nurse comes out rushing and say, "Oh, there's no time. You better come in." So I just came in, and usually they dress you up and everything. No time for that. It's coming out. So it was just like this, like a cork, says my wife. But unfortunately, my son came out purple. He didn't cry. He was not breathing. So he choked himself with the umbilical cord. Yeah. And so my wife is asking what's going on, and I can see the doctors doing something to him, but he's not reacting. And inside of me, it's again that feeling. And what I did was the same. I started doing service. Just right there next to my wife, I started moving my hands and just praying with the same prayer, just praying. That's all I did. And they put a tube through his nose, trying to inject some oxygen. Took some time, right? But then he started reacting, and then we're concerned that there was a brain damage because it was a long time without oxygen, and that's like, I was explained later that not that I know much about it, but say that when there's a lack of oxygen at that moment, then there's a brain damage, and there's nothing that you can do after that. So they were like very concerned. They start doing all the check-ins and everything. He was totally fine. And then I checked. Well, the next day we've organizing documents and everything, and I checked the papers. It turns out that he was born at 6:30. To me, that was Oyasama is real, and having a lot of personal things in the past, but that was the moment when I said, yeah, that's the form of God in front of my praise. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to question number 3. Okay. This is about your favorite teaching, favorite Mikagura verse or something along those lines. What specific teaching or experience in faith made you a better person? What verses, phrases of the teachings do you reach out to, quote, often when you are in a difficult place?
Full disclosure, I'm not going to can't give you a verse number or anything like that. So, yeah. But I think there's 2 that I refer to often. The first being keep the mind of a 3-year-old child. And the reason for that is because I think as, when you're younger, it was like, oh man, I can't wait to grow up. I can't wait to, and then you grow up and you're just like, wow, this was not what I thought it was going to be. There's a lot to deal with and a lot of responsibility, a lot of choices to make. And I think inside of all of that, there is a tendency to kind of lose that spark or that joy, or that ability to play, right? Like a child, like a 3-year-old. And in moments where I find myself overcome with everything that I have to manage, that's something that I go to or think about. And then the second is, I guess it's like it's something I heard very early on when I was first introduced to Tenrikyo, but like sincerity of the mind. Like if it's not done with sincerity, then there's no real point in doing it. And I say that to everyone, even people that aren't Tenrikyo in my life, because I'm just like, well, they always feel the need to force themselves to do certain things. And I'm just like, well, if it's not done sincerely, right? If it's not done with sincerity, then is there any real point to doing it? I think that allows them to go into it or make a decision from a different perspective. And yeah, so that's another one that I refer to often.
Thank you.
For me, I think I'm actually going to read it word for word. It's from the Doctrine. The sights and the sounds of the world do not change, but our perception of the world, that which is reflected in our mind, changes. The world, which we had imagined to be a world of suffering, now comes to be perceived as a world of joy. When our minds are bright, the world is bright. This is what is meant by the teachings. When your mind is completely purified, then comes paradise. I think for me, personally, one of my biggest struggles ever since I was younger was interhuman relationships. So I've always been misunderstood, or I've always had conflict with friends. And I've had experiences from childhood to even Oyasato seminar. I've had experiences which also led into when I attended Shuyokai. And so I think now as an adult, I have actively tried to make an effort when I see conflict, or if I meet someone that I may bump heads with, that if I change the way I think or the way I view that person, I can't expect that other person to change. So unless I do it from within, nothing will get better. And so that's something that I do try to actively work on when I do come across somebody that I may not like or I may not agree with. And so for me, I always kind of go to that one, the sights and the sounds quote.
Thank you.
I think you realize, right, that I'm not an English native speaker, right? I'm from Colombia. My native language is Spanish, although I rarely use it. And after 10 years living in Japan, so my head is a bit of a mess sometimes, and then 7 years in Ukraine, so kind of have a lot of things. But I tend to memorize things in the language in which I learned it, okay? So because of that, there are few verses in Ofudesaki that are always in my mind, and that since I was little, right, my life has taken turns on ways that I no one could have predicted, and so and like really crazy things that where do we go from here at that moment, right? Like, where do we go now from, where do we go from here? And then it turned out to be even a better place, right? So now knowing that path that I was put into led me to a much better place. But at that moment, you don't understand that, right? At that moment, it's just chaos, right? And it's a struggle at that moment. And only years later, when you turn back and you're like, oh, so that's why. So because of that, my favorite parts of the Ofudesaki, and again, because I learned in Japanese, is, and I'll try to translate because I don't remember the English version, but it says, "Meni mien kami no suru koto ni wa nani o suru to mo chotto ni shiremai." That song, so God unseen to your eyes, I'm just trying to translate it here. What it does is, you can know what it does. You won't be able to know what it does. And there's another portion that says the same. God unseen to your eyes. What he does, let's think about it. Let's ponder about it. Right? And there's another one that it goes along the same lines. So it's interesting how that verse goes few times throughout Mikagura Ofudesaki in the same way. So to me, at that moment of, so when I was younger, right, at those moments, it was really hard not understanding what's going on. Now that I'm 44 years old, every time something like really harsh happens, I always refer to these verses. It was like, okay, I just don't know what it's going to be right now, but this got to have a meaning, and it's got to be a good one. So that's always what I keep in my mind with these verses. Thank you.
Okay, so one last question I would like to pose to the panelists is, how do you use or relate to the service as a means to make you a better person? How do you relate to the service as a means to make you a better person or your book?
I think there's so, and this is just to quote my wife in all the conversations. My wife and I love to talk, and the kids hate it when we start talking about this because it's usually on our way back from New York Center after monthly service, So it's a long drive. It's like 4 hours, and the kids are close in the car with us, and I don't allow phones, nothing. And so like, oh, here we go. So they hate it. But I think what makes a difference between being a Tenrikyo follower, being any other religion's follower, I think that is a big point right there. You pray. In any religion, you pray. In at large, right? Your prayers are for something good. Even if it's just for yourself, it is for something good, or if it's for the community, or if it's for another person. So there's no difference if you go to a Catholic church, to a Christian church, to a Tenrikyo church. To that point, there's no difference. So what makes the difference? And this, again, my opinion, going back to the disclaimer of Rev. at the very beginning, it's not headquarters position. It's just my opinion, my wife's, for that matter. What makes the difference is service. Because we go about our days every day, right? Going about our lives every day means piling dust, right? Piling dust is something that is natural in human beings, and you can never get rid of it. So it's not a sin. It's just something that happens naturally, just the same as you use your body to work, to study, and it gets dirty throughout the day, right? You come home and, if men, we tend to kind of smell a bit more than women, right? So there's a smell, but it's not a horrible smell, right? But if you leave your body like that for days, for weeks, just the second day, you already know that there's a difference, right? So the same thing, right? Same thing happens with your heart. Loving yourself, there's nothing wrong with loving yourself. Again, this is quoting my wife's words, which I really like. Loving yourself, there's nothing wrong in loving yourself. If you don't love yourself, who's going to love you? But when that loving yourself goes to the point of ignoring others and others' needs, that's when that normal human feeling becomes dust. When you want something, wanting something is nothing wrong, right? But when you want it without doing the effort to achieve it, when you just sit down to whine because you don't have it, that's when that is dust. So that dust piles in your heart. So there's what comes the difference between being a Tenrikyo follower and being a non-Tenrikyo follower. You do service. Does that mean that you're pure? No, you're not. Because the next morning you're going to do exactly the same thing as anyone else is going to do. It's going to get mad. Tell me when I'm driving. It's just insane. I get mad at every single person. I hate the world when I'm driving. Does that... So what's the difference? The difference is that I recognize, I'm able to, because I'm doing service, God enables me to recognize when I've done something wrong. Whereas, with all the due respect, but other people of other faiths, they are just not capable of recognizing what is wrong. What did I do? It's not me, right? So being Tenrikyo is quite hard for that matter. Because when you do service and you recognize whatever is going around you, it's got to be something about you, right? Good and bad, but it's about you. Whatever you see around you, whatever the world that you see through your eyes, it's a reflection of what's going on with you. And that's when we're taught that the world doesn't change. The way we take the world changes. And that can only be achieved when we do service. When we do service, the same person who annoyed us so much turns out to be not so annoying. The same situation that it was so difficult to go through, so challenging, it gets resolved. Same person who was sick. And even the people who we pray so hard for and pass away, and we feel, is my Sasuke not working? Am I not worth it? I don't have enough virtue for this person to? No. It's the part that we all have a causality, and we can't think of life as this, 70 years, 60 years, depending on what your lifespan is, this physical one. But it's a whole continuation, and you carry baggage, and dying at a younger age doesn't mean a bad thing. It's just moving on into that path towards an eventual joyous life. So I think that is the way I believe service, by doing service, makes you a better person. God enables you to recognize your shortcomings and the ways to improve. Thank you.
I want to thank the three of you for sharing your experiences and thoughts. Now we're going to move on to the second part of our program. We're going to divide you all into 4 groups, and we're going to pass out a worksheet, and with the idea that we would all try to share some of our thoughts in regard to some of the questions that I've illustrated.